All right, welcome to the Wrestling Perspective podcast. I'm Petey Williams, and my co-host Dennis. He's on vacation, but it's all right. I'll stop there for the applause from everybody listening. All right, now Dennis is on vacation, but filling in for Dennis is from a guy from the podcast In This Ring, Joe Pisapia. Joe, how's it going, eh?
It's going great, brother. I'm excited to be here. Who needs Dennis Farrell, baby? I'm going to come in here with you. We're going to rock this. We're going to take this over. We're going to have some fun while he's out. God knows what. He's probably got, one cigar in his mouth, one probably lit in the ashtray, one probably behind his ear. God knows what Dennis is doing, man. But I'm excited to be on here. I was on a couple weeks ago with Dennis talking wrestling when you were off. So I guess I'm kind of like the vacation sub now, which, there's worse things to be.
Yeah, no, I agreed. And the cigar thing, I could totally see Dennis doing that with cigars like stuck in every orifice of his body or whatever. I didn't say that, but it's like an invasion angle. But before we get to it, first, I know Dennis always thanks all the fans before we start our show and stuff like that. So I also want to thank all our fans and listeners. And believe it or not, I was looking on iTunes the other day, and we got I guess in the category of like sports and recreation or when there's certain categories, we're like number 6. I know they fluctuate all day and stuff like that, but truly unbelievable. I'm like just speechless. Thank you to all the fans for just listening and all that stuff. And if you haven't subscribed yet, please go there, subscribe, give us a 5-star rating, help us, grow this. I'm just having so much fun doing it. Looking at some future things we have going on with the Wrestling Perspective podcast. We got 2 guests that we have lined up. One is Kevin Heffernan, who's in Super Troopers 2. So how cool is that we have a guy? I know he's a big wrestling fan, so I'm really excited to talk to him. Also, a stand-up comedian and TV star, Ron Funches, I think I'm saying that right. Ron Funches, huge wrestling fan as well. So I always like talking to people that aren't in the wrestling business, but they're wrestling fans to see their perspective from the outside. And just super excited. That's going to be coming in the upcoming weeks. But other than that, that's all the housekeeping stuff we have going on. And yeah, Joe, I mean, what do you got? Well, turn it over to you.
Well, geez, I got to follow that now, PD. But let me tell you about that.
I had to get that out of the way.
Yeah, you got any more stars you want to drop before you throw it to me? I mean, geez, I got, is Brad Pitt coming on next week too? I mean, Christ. No, that's awesome.
Hopefully, yeah, 2019 Brad Pitt is what we're hoping for. He's not even a wrestling fan, so we don't even care.
Well, you know what? But that's the great thing about this business, right? It's you don't always know like where those patches are in the entertainment world of people who love this. Whether it's the athletes like the Josh Reddicks of the world in baseball, you get a lot of athletes who are really into wrestling. You get a lot of actors. I myself come from the acting world originally in the sports world, and for me it was something that I grew up with. I remember going to see Nassau Coliseum. Dude, I was there at, closed circuit TV for WrestleMania 3 to watch, Macho Man and Steamboat. Yeah, I'm giving you my age a little bit almost. I'm just about pushing 40.
Wow.
But I remember being there and I mean, I had been hooked, and I remember my dad used to let me stay up to watch, like the old Saturday night main events that used to be on, which was, you get to stay up till like 11 o'clock and watch it. It was so cool. And and it's just something that I've carried on, and my kids are into it now, and I got 2 daughters, and they're super into it, and the women are just so spectacular now. I mean, it's just, what that women's division's become, and for them, they're so incredibly into it that my daughter's 8th birthday was a whole theme. I even made a wrestling belt cake. I'm a Renaissance man, Petey. I made a cake for my daughter, the wrestling belt, and I'll show it to you. But let's get into it, and let's talk about some of the big stuff going on recently. And I know you just had Double J on, Jeff Jarrett on a couple weeks ago. And I heard the interview. It was terrific. I thought you guys did a great job. And I know how important he was to you in this business. And, for these, for the new people and people who are in the independent circuit, how important is it when somebody sticks their neck out for you? Or how important is it when you get to a point in this business where somebody either takes a shot on you or takes you under their wing? And, how does that really affect your career then going forward? Because, I mean, doesn't everybody kind of need that shot no matter how much talent you have? It takes that one person to kind of put their wing around you and kind of pull you along with them.
Yeah, no, you're right. That's a huge thing in this business. Somebody's always kind of sticking their neck out for you. And I've done it for people before. And, the guy obviously that stuck their neck out for me to Jeff Jarrett, and I call him Uncle Jeff, is Scott D'Amore. Scott was always a big fan of mine, knew I was a solid worker and stuff. And this is before I, did the Canadian Destroyer and stuff. And he kept saying, like, yeah, I got this guy named, Petey Williams. He looks like Buff Bagwell. That got thrown into a dryer, but when he came out of the dryer, he learned how to work.
Oh my God, that's quite the description, my man. Let me tell you that.
Yeah. So I mean, I think they passed on me once because it was just like I was just going to be a dude that, like, a random X Division dude that came in and did X Division stuff, and then I that's when they decided to do the Team Canada angle. And, originally I want to say before they had, like, D'Amore doing the Coach D'Amore, they were going to try to get Bret Hart as the coach, but that didn't come to. And then the old Team Canada was like Teddy Hart, Jack Evans, and they wanted to get TJ Wilson, actually, who is, TJ Wilson. What's his name in WWE? It's still TJ Wilson, right?
Was it TJP?
No, Tyson Kidd.
Tyson Kidd. Oh, no, Tyson Kidd Williams there. Yes.
I'm sorry. So yeah, so Tyson Kidd, they wanted him in there for whatever reason. I don't know if he got tied up with WWE. I can't remember what's going on with that. But they also wanted Davey Boy Smith's kid, Harry Smith, but he wanted to finish school. So it happened to be the right circumstances at the right time where they needed an extra body that was actually legit Canadian, and Scott, like you said, stuck his neck out for me. And it happened. It worked out pretty well because that night that we did all the filming and stuff, we did the Wednesday pay-per-views before the show went on the air. We filmed 4 single matches for something that was going to air on a pre-taped pay-per-view later on down the road, like in a couple weeks. And Teddy Hart got injured in his match, and he was supposed to be in the first match in the live pay-per-view. And when he got injured, they said, we can't put him on the live pay-per-view. So they put me in there. So it just so happened, like, Scott stuck his neck out for me. I performed, and then I overperformed because they were able to fill me in like you have 15 minutes to prepare. Go ahead and do it. And I was able to perform. And then, I remember Abyss saying, like, man, I can't believe that you did that. Like, he was in awe. He's like, that was a tough position to be in and stuff like that. So sometimes it works when people stick their neck out for you. And even so, like, when it came down to, and sometimes it doesn't, but after we did all that and then it came out, they wanted to give me the title. And it was kind of like, it obviously Jeff's decision. And he's like, well, we got to switch this up. I guess we could put it on one of the Canadian guys. And who should we put it on? Because Johnny Devine was also in the X Division, but it was kind of like the choice, like, oh, let's put it on Petey. He does that Canadian Destroyer. He kind of took a risk with me, but that's what Jeff did. Like, he created TNA, he created Impact, and he was trying to make stars, trying to take risks, trying to do something different. And, some of them paid off, some of them didn't. And it's what he did. And
he also gave a shot to, a different type of wrestler too, the athleticism, and that's always been the knock on the big company at times too in the WWE, is that obsession that Vince has always had with the big man and, all that sort of stuff. But, the evolution and things have changed. I'm a big Shawn Michaels guy in my lifetime. That was my guy. And, that to me, it's about the guy who can tell the story. It's about the guy who can do, can work in the ring, can work on the mic. I don't care if he's big. I don't care if he's small. I don't care. And I feel like nowadays, and this is a good transition to this question too, because I was curious what your thoughts are. But I think that nowadays the general wrestling public, the true hardcore fan base, is very open and at peace with the idea of the main guy or the top level guy or somebody who holds a belt, who's running the show at the top of the chain. Doesn't have to be a 6'5" guy. It doesn't have to be one of these huge dudes anymore. Because right now, I mean, you earn respect for the athleticism. You earn respect by your in-ring work and what you can do on mic and all that stuff. And I feel like that evolution has really taken hold. And you see guys like AJ now, who I know you worked with for years and stuff. He's the top over there in WWE. You see, some of these other guys nowadays who are not the biggest dudes, but really I feel like that that's almost kind of, that it's like ancient history. Do you feel like that? Do you feel like now we've gotten to a place where the fan bases accept that as, we don't care the size of the dude at the top of the food chain.
Yeah.
We want that to just be the best dude there is.
Yeah. No, that's what it is nowadays. I mean, but go back to like the 80s. Okay. Look at what was on television as, the standard for what a male should be and what a female should be. Like you look at, I remember growing up in the 80s, He-Man. I mean,
oh sure,
dude is jacked, he's like the star of the show, all this kind of stuff. And what's the female that's the top? Barbie, right? Looking like super, just like her bust and waist size and all that kind of stuff, and beautiful, all that kind of stuff. And nowadays, I mean, we're in a movement right now where that's actually not politically correct to look that way. It's almost like if you have muscles, you're frowned upon. It's we're almost like the other end of the spectrum now. So yeah, I mean, and I think people don't care. Like you look at UFC and stuff like that. Sometimes the heavyweights aren't the biggest draw. You look at Conor McGregor. He's nowhere near. I weigh more than Conor McGregor, and I'm like a cruiserweight. And he's the biggest draw right now. I mean, it matters of who's going to put on the best show, who people want to see, who people are going to be entertained by, and that's what it is. And now, is there a place for guys that are like larger than life, big and jacked, and all that kind of stuff?
Well,
yeah.
When you get a guy like a Braun Strowman, who I don't know if I've ever seen a guy that big do the kind of stuff that guy can do. He's fast. Legitimately fast, like to get around the ring. We all know the power of a guy like that, but I mean, you don't see the big guy leave his feet very often too, and he's not afraid to leave his feet, and that's something you don't see with the big 6'8", 300-pound guy. That's, usually they're the big and slow kind of thing. He's not like that. He's a freak of nature in terms of the athleticism, and I think that's what people want to see. I feel like we're at a point now in just, when you see the New Japan stuff and you see the Lucha Underground stuff and you see, Ring of Honor and TNA and all these groups now, the athleticism is what captivates people. But still, I feel like if you can't tell the story with it, it's just a lot of fancy moves and not a lot of, it doesn't drive home. It doesn't stick with people. And that's, I think, the difference is too. You got a lot of great storytellers out there. You got the guys like Kenny Omega who knows how to go out there and, run a match and tell a story with it. And I think that's, I don't know if you saw, I'm not sure if you did or not, but you saw the Jericho Kenny Omega earlier in the year, right?
I didn't see the match, but I heard all about it. I mean, I've wrestled Kenny Omega back when he was still living in Winnipeg, man. Like,
I figured as much.
Anything.
All you Canadian guys, you all know each other. Everybody wrestles together. But I'll tell you what, the story of the match, the way it unfolds and the storytelling through choreography that's where it's at. Like, that's always, to me, the pinnacle. And when you can capture the imagination, you can capture, people in when you can tell a story like Undertaker and Shawn Michaels at WrestleMania, the light and the dark and all this stuff, and you can make it work. To me, that's the coolest. I want to talk about one of these guys too, and talk about, the big return of Daniel Bryan, which happened last week. And, there's a guy too, an organic superstar, a little guy that kind of fits that mold that we're talking about. And when I say organic superstar, I mean it, those guys that, whether or not, the WWE wanted to push this guy or that guy, whatever it was, the crowd let everybody know this is the guy that we want. And the 2 years obviously out and now back in the ring, the organic superstar, how important is that now that companies, no matter what level it is, whether it be indies, whether it be the bigger companies, how important is it that they listen to that fan base and basically go along with it to a certain extent and push those guys organically as the crowd kind of builds with them?
Yeah, so I'll give you kind of a long answer on that one.
Well, we got time, baby. I mean, we're here. I cleared my schedule for you, Petey.
Thanks. I have so many things about that organic. It's so to answer your question in short, it's so important now in a wrestling company to listen to the fans. I mean, everything is social media and just listening to the fans and all that kind of, it's not like the old days where you'd be like, this is our guy. We're going to push him. Fans are going to like him because we're booking him this way. There's no social media. That's what we're going to do. So now it's different. And, Daniel Bryan, I mean, man, you are right. It was so organic. Like, you could tell WWE did not want to put him in that main event spot back in that WrestleMania. I think it was like WrestleMania 30 or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't want to do it. so bad, but they're like, you know what, we got him, man. I'm like, this guy's our biggest star. And the more that the office didn't want it to do it, the more the fans wanted it. So it's so important with that organic. Now, looking at his return, I mean, I'm super happy he's coming back. I know he missed wrestling. When I was out of wrestling for 3 years, I missed it so much, and I came back, and it's a good feeling. I know what he's feeling like. He's feeling like refreshed, like a resurrection, just so excited because he gets to do it again, and he hasn't been able to do it and stuff. So I get his feeling. At the same time, I'm kind of like, I'm a little concerned because, like, when I stepped away from wrestling, it wasn't injury related. With him, it is. He's got kids now.
Well, when you stepped away, was it a burnout thing, Petey, or was it, if it wasn't an injury?
Yeah, no, it wasn't anything like that. I just had a different direction in life I was going to go.
Mm-hmm.
And then it just so happened that some things opened up and stuff like that. I was kind of pulled back into it, and it just worked out to my benefit. But it wasn't an injury thing at all. With him, it is. And, if it was an injury thing for me back then, and I have kids now, I probably wouldn't step back in the ring just because, I mean, I've seen guys break their necks off of something so small it doesn't even look like it was anything. So I'm concerned at that aspect because, and I've said this on, just when I did the media conference call with Impact last Wednesday, I told him, I said, back when I was in my early 20s, throughout my whole life, wrestling has always been number one to me. Always number one. Nothing else came before that. But now, I have kids and people that look, little kids that look up to me and that rely on me and all that kind of stuff.
Right.
That, my kids are number one now and wrestling is number two. And that's just the way it is. And,
it's a healthier perspective though, too, Petey,
yeah,
because I think, in some ways, having that perspective of where you put the business second, it might actually make you better at it at this point in your life. Don't you think, to a certain extent?
I think I evolved as a wrestler. I could see myself going back. Like when I came back, I'm not doing anything crazy in the ring at all. I'm taking much more calculated risk because I have little ones. I have 3 little ones that, rely on me to come home every night. Before I didn't. I could do whatever I want. I was like, yeah, powerbomb me on the ground. Yeah, it'll hurt. I might not be able to walk for a week or whatever, but it'll be awesome, right? Now I'm like, you know what? I'm not going to take that powerbomb to the ground because I got to be able to walk and play with my kids and all that kind of stuff. But I mean, with Daniel Bryan and his injuries, I mean, if it's true what he says about having seizures and stuff like that, I mean, that's like, I hope nothing bad happens to him and stuff like that. I hope he does take on maybe that lighter schedule and not like I know Daniel Bryan though, he's going to want to be like, yeah, let me work all the house shows, all the pay-per-views, all the Raws, all the Smack.
Well, that would be so foolish, man. I hope that's not what they do either. That's I hope at least not right away. And I there's a part of me too that wonders, he's still so young, but I wonder too about a certain amount of legacy. I mean, how does it tarnish the legacy if he comes back and he's holding back in the back of his head? I mean, I've seen this with players. I've covered, baseball, football for the last decade. And, for me, you watch some of those guys and they come back from injuries and they're not quite the same because there's always something measured or there's always something in the back of their head. And when you're, I understand the adrenaline of the crowd and I totally understand that as a fighter. I teach fighting and sword work in New York. I train actors to go fight on TV and that's my job. And, to me that I feel like even in there, when there's an injury, when someone has an injury and you're working around it, there's something always in the back of your head about it. And sometimes, with the audience and the pop and stuff that going on, you lose yourself in it and it goes. But then there's other times where that starts to die down after the first couple of times again, and you're back in control of it. And I kind of wonder at a certain point, is there a possibility of tarnishing the legacy of what he built too, of where he was? And we've had so much, we have 2 years away from something or 2 years and change. And everybody looks back even more fondly, even though it was a great run that he had and a great career. Do you think there's even a chance of him ruining a legacy a little bit?
That's a good question because and it's hard to answer that because a couple things. He's been on TV for the past so many years when he's not been wrestling.
Right.
So I don't, that's kind of a bummer to me. If they knew they didn't know he was going to come back, but had they known he was going to come back, keep him off TV for years. I mean, remember when Shawn Michaels made his big return?
Oh yeah.
And I mean, he was off and on commissioner, this, that, and the other thing, but he wasn't like on a weekly basis on their television show. So when he comes back, it's not like, yeah, we can't wait to see Daniel Bryan again. Like, you already got to see him every week. Now you just get to see him wrestle again and fight for titles and stuff like that. So,
well, there's part of me that wonders too, Petey, if what happened was, that he was clear to get all the doctor's clearances, and at a certain point they really didn't want to. They never had intentions of putting him back in the ring, and basically the hand got forced. It's like, do we let this guy walk because he's willing to walk and go somewhere else to another brand, and how much is that going to hurt us? Or do we bite the bullet and go, look, if he's cleared, he's cleared, and we got to let him go because we can't afford to lose him? I wonder how much of a business decision at the end of the day it was.
Yeah, and that's a good question too, because I don't know, because I'm not sitting in those meetings or anything like that. But
you should be. You and I both should be. Let's get some seats at those meetings. How about? But we'll get one for Dennis too. We'll get one for Dennis. We'll get 3 seats at the meeting. Yeah. It'll be a good time.
Yeah, but I mean, I know a lot of people are wondering about and questioning the booking at WrestleMania. It seems like it's going to be like a mixed tag or something like, or no, not mixed tag. Well, Shane maybe.
Well, him and Shane against
Shane McMahon. Yeah, Sammy and Kevin, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So I mean, that's good though. That's good. A lot of people are like, oh, he deserves much more than that, stuff like that. I remember when I made my return, I begged like Tommy Dreamer. I'm like, hey man, it's been like 3 years since I've wrestled. Can you not put me in a singles match? Because I mean, I haven't done this in so long. I'm like, can you put me in, like a tag match or a multiple man match? So it's good right now for where Daniel Bryan's at.
And it's great to work with two guys he's got such a familiarity with too.
Yeah, but I mean, this is great. Because this is what's going to happen. I'm calling this right now. If this is the tag match that they do, Daniel Bryan will get his shine spot with his yes kicks and all that kind of stuff. And then, they'll take the heat on Shane McMahon. And then Daniel Bryan will get his hot tag and he'll do his drop kicks in the corner and all that kind of, and it'll be great. Like, it'll be like Daniel Bryan highlight reel. It'll be awesome.
Of course.
And that's what it'll be. And they'll get them back up. So, I mean, I like the fact that they're slowly building them in, and then, wait till SummerSlam or whatever to give them title shots and all that kind of stuff. The only problem I have with it is, like, the reason why the fans fell in love with them so much beforehand is because WWE didn't want to push him, but the fans were like, we love him so much. So it was almost like it was the fans against the machine.
Right.
And organically it just happened. Now it's like, he's back. Now WWE's like, yes, cheer for Daniel Bryan. I know we know you guys like him. Like, it's almost like the machine's behind him now. So it's not happening organically right now. Now it's like the WWE knows what the fans like. It's just, what he was represented is not.
Well, that moment
in
time is over. You know what I mean? That capsule is over of the, like you said, the man against the machine. He is absolutely part of the machine now, and he was such an important part of the machine that I just think they couldn't let him walk. And I think that their intention was to keep him on TV and keep him part of the brand. And then at this certain point you're right. In a perfect world, he would have gone away for a while and come back, but obviously the groundswell, it all just came up and came to fruition at the right time. And, with WrestleMania coming and all that, it just made sense. And there's no way you can let him walk. It would just be bad for business. And I don't think Triple H and company were going to let that happen. Yeah, I want to ask you something on the flip side of this, because Petey, if Daniel Bryan is everything that, reeks of organic superstar and the guy who put his dues in and made it, and they got Ronda Rousey on the other end of that spectrum, who's coming from a whole different universe of the UFC stuff, who, God bless her, we all know how great she was as a fighter, and no one's going to question her work ethic. I don't question her commitment. I don't question any of that. To me, there's something else. There's an X factor. There's something else about this business that you either have or you don't, and that's the ability, it's that charisma to hold the crowd. It's that being able to connect to what you're doing. And to me, so far, and I know it's been a short sample size, and we haven't really seen her in the ring yet, I'm having a hard time connecting. I thought they had a package about her a couple weeks ago that was really good, where you really got to know a lot about her and the reasons why she was doing it. She was very emotional and kind of humanized her. But I always have a hard time, always. And this goes back to the 80s, whenever, from Mr. T days, for God's sakes, whenever you're trying to bring on somebody, some star, whether it be Lawrence Taylor, whether it be, God, we've done it, in the WCW days with the Dennis Rodmans and Karl Malones and stuff. To me, whatever it is, it always feels forced. It never works. And I know this is a unique individual, and I understand the importance of eyeballs, and I understand she moves the needle. I get all that. But the wrestling audience, do you think that hardcore core fan base is going to buy into her when they're basically kind of, number one, shoving her down the throat, and number two, she kind of seems to lack that X factor quality where I feel like already she doesn't have that charismatic feel. Like you automatically just go, yep, that's the one.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think like right when I talked about this with Dennis, like right when she like came out at the Royal Rumble, or like when I think when she came out at the Royal Rumble,
uh-huh.
I said, you know what, man? I said, I think the fans are going to turn on her just because she doesn't have like, they know that, you know, she has the machine behind her. It's not an organic
feels so
thing.
forced.
And like,
she's pointing to the,
it
she's like
does.
smiling and then she's angry and pointing to the sign. She was like the angry monkey from Family Guy. She got pointing to the sign and then she would smile and then she would point to the sign angry. I was like, what's going on? It's like they told her in her ear to do certain things and it just felt weird, man.
No, that's what it is, because the thing is, when you start on the indies, you look at guys like Daniel Bryan, Kevin Owens, Sami Zayn, you know, AJ, Joe, all those guys, they've been at it for like anywhere from 10 to 20 years, right? So they know how to like they have so much like experience with reaction, right? So now you have Ronda Rousey hasn't done this. So obviously, like I'm assuming Triple H is mentoring her. And he's saying, like, listen, when the camera's here, do this, do that, do a smile with a grin. Just like you said, point to the sign. It'll be great. It'll look great on TV, but it doesn't come off as natural because she hasn't been doing it for 20 years like some of these other guys have. And that's why I think, you know, part of it, the fans are going to turn on her because they're going to realize, like, man, she doesn't seem natural doing, like, the fans aren't going to know what it is that's off, but they're going to be like, oh, something's off. Like, we don't know what it is, and what it is, I'm telling them right now, it's the experience behind it. Just like, you know, having all the experience of doing all those things. She doesn't have them. They're feeding them to her, and she's just trying to absorb it, and she's going to treat it like it's like, this is what I feel like a movie, like acting lines and stuff like that. And yeah, camera work and all that kind of stuff. She just doesn't have the experience. And, you know, I hope it works out for her because she's Ronda Rousey. Like,
and I'm sure
everybody
physically in the ring, she
her,
has
you know?
enormous athleticism potential. And I kind of worry too, where you're putting so much pressure on a WrestleMania match where she's going to be working off Stephanie, and God bless Stephanie. You know, I love her, but I mean, is that really the first entree that you want to put her in? And like you said, you know, it's easier to put her in the tag match. It's safer and all that. And maybe she'll end up working more with Triple H. Who knows how that's all going to work out? But I just feel like they're setting it all up for failure. And on top of that, man, you know, the wrestling fan has a BS meter that's much higher than others. They know when someone's out there and having fun. They know when someone's out there and is nervous. They know when someone's out there and just doesn't have a feel or is not connected to whether it's the gimmick, the character, the material, whatever it is. They know, they smell it. And when they smell fear, you're as good as toast. You know that. And you've seen it happen, I'm sure, a million times to people with a lot of talent, but if you can't connect to that audience and there's something that's not authentic about it, they sniff it out, they know it, and they recognize it. And it's really hard to make up that ground.
Yeah, no, and I know, and she's with there's WrestleMania match. I mean, Stephanie hasn't wrestled in, I can't even remember the last time Stephanie wrestled. Kurt Angle has had one match in the past, in WWE in the past, well, since last WrestleMania,
yeah,
right?
Since he came in, yeah, he came in.
Or 6-man.
Well, yeah, he came in because of the illness. That was when the illness ran through everybody, and it was Roman was out, and all those guys were out. Bray Wyatt was out. I think some sort of, I don't know, meningitis outbreak, some awful kind of thing was like going through there.
Yeah, the mumps, yeah.
Yeah, so whatever it was, all I know, next thing you know, Kurt Angle's dressed up in the Shield vest, and I'm looking around going, what the hell is going on here? And then Finn Balor fought AJ, which was great. That was fun.
Yeah. And that was probably, you know what, I remember when that mumps outbreak happened and they had to pull in AJ, and I know Finn was supposed to wrestle Bray. The AJ and Finn match it was, with no build-up or anything, was way better than anything that Finn and Bray would have done together.
Oh, 100%.
So, and it's just, you know, just two professionals in the ring together, and just AJ is just so awesome. But, you know, looking at Ronda Rousey's WrestleMania match, you got 4 people in there. Ronda Rousey hasn't even had a wrestling match yet. This will be her first one. Kurt has had one in the past year that was like a multiple-man match. Stephanie, it's been probably years since she's had a match. And, Triple H, I mean, he's had house shows and all that kind of stuff, but he's still a part-time wrestler. But, he's going to be the one laying all this out, overproducing. I mean, they're probably going through the match like as we speak right now. Oh, no, Raw's on right now. But, I mean, they're
no,
probably going
they
through
might
the
be
match
doing it there too. They might still be in the back.
Yeah.
You're right, though. It's going to be so heavily choreographed too. But you and I both know once you hit that ring, it all changes. Once you hit that audience, especially an audience of that size, and the adrenaline pumps in and things get away from you when you're not used to that. Because that's the other thing too, is it's such it's one thing to do it in front of a small, arena. It's another thing to do in front of a giant arena. It's another thing to do it at WrestleMania, where the attention and the focus factor is so high. It's a lot of pressure. And I feel like they're only thinking about the upside, but not enough about the downside. And I feel like they're not protecting themselves a little bit here. And they're making a big investment. If it fails, I kind of think, it's going to be one of the things we look back on in a couple of years and go, oh, yeah, remember that experiment? Because I feel like it's headed that way already.
Well, okay, so what they're doing right now is good with Ronda Rousey because they're putting her in a tag match, mixed tag. She's going to get her hands on Triple H, so they're going to make her look strong. Wrestling a man, I would say, like she's going to throw him around and stuff. And she's already done that.
Right. She put him through a table a couple weeks ago.
Great.
Right?
They're making her a badass. They can't put her in a singles match because that would, I don't even know how much training she's doing. That will expose her, I think. So right now where they're sitting with the mixed tag, if anything, if they get lost in there or whatever, Kurt and Triple H could come in. They can smooth things over. But I mean, they're probably going to be going over it. They've already started going over it and laying out the match. I guarantee it. Because it's like, I don't know, like 2 weeks away or something like that. So right now what they got is good. I think the fans are going to turn on her. I mean, when you see her come out, the fans cheer, but they don't cheer like they just saw Rusev or something like that.
Well, there's another organic one that's happening, and that's going to be fast. I'm so glad you said that because that's one to me that I saw, and even last week when it was him and Shinsuke, who's another fan darling. But this Rusev groundswell, I mean, it's one thing for the groundswell in Philadelphia a couple months back and stuff with the Rumble, and I went to school in Philadelphia, and Philly's a big Philly's a great wrestling town. Philly's just I was in college during the birth of ECW. And we used to go to those shows, and we were looking at each other like, "What is this? Oh my God! Like, what do we find?"
Time.
Oh yeah, I mean, to be able to be in Philadelphia at that time, and then it was also the Attitude Era. So we were at WrestleMania 15 that was in Philadelphia. We went to everything we could whenever it was around. But when you're talking about Rusev, there's another guy too now who's been in the company a while, and all of a sudden, whatever it is, whatever's working. Finally, the truth and honesty, the sensibility of letting the person have their natural. There's something about him now that is the natural personality of Rusev that's shining through, which I see glimmers of with Strowman too. Because I was at a house show back in December with my kids, and he was hilarious, doing selfies, doing all these other things down the ramp. And I was like, wow, this guy's really funny. And he was very, he's got a good sense of humor. He's very quick-witted. He's aware of the camera. Do you think that Rusev is, is this another one of these spots here where if they don't listen to the crowd, they don't listen to the fan base, they're going to miss a great opportunity here with Rusev, who, I don't know if anybody saw this coming, but whatever's happening now, it's for real.
Yeah, no, they're totally missing this opportunity. I mean, it's just because it's WWE. WWE, you can look back at it with Bryan. Like a lot of times they think, okay, this isn't our plan. Okay, this thing will wear off. And a lot of the times, like if you look at Fandango, for a while, like people were doing his song and stuff. They're like, that'll wear off. And it did wear off, right? And then Daniel Bryan, they were like, that'll wear off. Oh, but it didn't wear off. Oh, man, we're getting a lot of heat for this. Well, we better do something with this. So
you think they tested, Petey? Is that what you think? You think they think they want to see how real it is by letting to see how far it goes? And if it's far enough, then they buy in?
Yeah, because sometimes, and I think they learned this from the past, they'll buy in too quick. And they'll be like, "Oh man,
that's fair.
Maybe we shouldn't have bought in." And I mean, I don't know, but I think in a little bit, this Rusev Day thing will be gone. It'll be a thing of like, "Oh yeah, that was so 2018." Because I really don't think they're going to do anything with it right now. They're using him as like a stepping stone for like, well, you see, he's fighting who? AJ and Nakamura, right? Is that who he's kind of feuding with? Just like
Well,
getting
he's
them
kind of
ready
like
for
on the
their feud at
peripheral.
WrestleMania?
Basically, yeah.
Yeah.
He's basically, and it's funny because you listen to the crowd, you can hear the Nakamura chant and Rusev Day right on top of it, and it's bananas, man. Like it's just it's been now a couple of steady months of it, and you
Yeah,
can
because
also
it
see he's
started
taking
at
it.
the
It started,
it
right
started
around
the
November-ish, I
12
feel like.
days of Rusev or something like So
Yeah.
so it's been almost a half a year. Like we're in March now.
Mm-hmm.
That's 5 months. But I mean, almost a half year. And it's like, okay, maybe we should, but I mean, maybe they're thinking like, oh, he's just gonna die off. I mean, I really don't know how they question that. I know like on Impact, they'd be like, hey, let's run with this guy because they're looking at shots in the dark and stuff like that. Whoever's gonna be the next big star and stuff like that. Impact doesn't have that luxury. WWE does. They're like, well, we're going our way. Okay, maybe if Rusev fits in these storylines, then maybe we'll push him. Maybe, but it doesn't work like that over there.
Yeah, well, it's I also have noticed too. The last 6 months of Rusev too, he's in better physical condition than I think he's ever been in. He's certainly.
Well, it's because he shaved. He shaved his chest, I believe. Like he
He's
looks
just,
like more jacked.
no,
It's like
he's lost
it's
weight.
just
Because
perception.
I watched I went back and I was catching something because the kids wanted to see something, so we went back and we saw something from last year. He's lighter than he was. I mean, look, hairy. You can shave some hair off, but still, but he's thinner, he's trimmer, he's a little quicker than he was. And, there was rumors about him leaving too. I remember not that long ago in the summertime where his contract, I think, was up and they were, trying to figure out if he was going to stick around or not. But, look, whatever's going on now, it's working. And yeah, I mean, I don't know how long the Rusev Day thing lasts. And like you said, maybe there is something to it where you do get in danger of you push a guy who, with the groundswell and it fails and, you might ruin him or you might, ruin other opportunities you can have for other people that you count on more. Here's another question for you I got too, because I know, I mean, you've been, you've wrestled in independent circus. You've been all over and you've seen it and you have a really good gauge of this. And it's a question that I want to ask too, having worked for TNA, not once now, but twice. Do you feel like there's still an imaginary line in the territory of the South between the South and other companies? Like, do you feel that is there that sense either with the crowd or just in general, like, yeah, the other, Ring of Honor, New Japan, WWE, yeah, they all have their moments there. But is the South still to a certain extent kind of its own unique territory?
Oh, you mean like
from a fan base perspective, like they like their guys and their style or whatever it is, and they're never going to quite always be what love the WWE necessarily to that extent.
Yeah, and I think Dennis, me and Dennis argued about this a little bit. He wanted to ask Uncle Jeff about the South, like the same type of question. And I'm like, I don't know if that's a good question to ask, but we went back and forth and all that kind of stuff. But I've worked in the South, and I'll give you a prime example. So we used to do pay-per-views at this place called the Asylum. It was the Nashville Fairgrounds. We called it the Asylum. That was the name of our place. And after we retired the weekly pay-per-views and just we're filming in Florida, Bert Prentice, he used to run just local shows there, and he brought me in, and myself and Eric Young wrestled America's Most Wanted, James Storm and Chris Harris. And the match was a little bit different because we're in Nashville, Tennessee. It doesn't get more southern than that. Mm-hmm. And I've wrestled in that same arena before, and we've done crazy stuff in that arena, because live on pay-per-view and stuff like that. But I remember whipping off myself and Eric Young. We're beating up James Storm, and I just said back elbow. So we whip him off, and we go to give him a back elbow, and he doesn't bump. He kind of does this twirl, and then slowly falls to the ground.
Uh-huh.
And he goes, "Why are you bumping me?" And I'm like, "What?" Like I didn't understand what he meant. I'm like, "What?" And he's like, "Yeah, we don't bump here." And I'm like, "Oh," I'm like, 'cause it's so like, and the thing that the crowd loved the most, we were doing this like arm wrenching thing that they were really into, where he was like, my own partner was wrenching my arm and he didn't even know it, and we used the like, it was just so like, we call it gaga in wrestling, like it's just so
yeah.
But they react to that. They react to that little funny stuff, and just they could care less if I'm doing a 450.
Too. Right.
Yes,
yeah.
they could care less if I'm doing like a 450 or a backflip or whatever the case may be. But if you're in Philly, they're going to want to see all that high flying stuff. They're not going to want to see that, gaga stuff. And it's just so different. You go to California for PWG and you could do all that crazy stuff too, which they love, but they almost want to see like the most creative comedy you could come up with in professional wrestling. Like it's really, it's almost ridiculous to a point. So yeah, the South, I mean, I don't know. I don't know if it's like their upbringing and it's like, Southern wrestling, like your dad went and now you have a kid, now you have another kid and you just kind of watch that wrestling and you like Jerry Lawler and whatever the case may be.
It's generational. I think wrestling is generational.
Yeah, it is. So, I mean, that's a good question. And I don't know if the South is always going to be like that Southern style wrestling. I don't know. I don't want to say they're like behind on the times.
No, I think they have a different. They have a different tone. I think it's exactly right. Whether it be the old NWA, or Ric Flair era of stuff, or early WCW, even before it, where the Nitro years really kicked into gear. I mean, it was a different brand, a different feel. The characters were different. The style of wrestling was very different. And I always feel like there's still. I think everything is integrated as much as it ever can be, but I feel like there's still that original, it's like an imaginary line where, they still almost, like you said, they're not as impressed as some of the stuff that, the Philly crowd or the Northeast crowd would be impressed by, or even the Toronto crowd, whatever it might be. And I just find it fascinating. And I wondered if you felt that, and you sharing that story to me says it all. To me, that's exactly the point. It seems like it's still, no matter how many years go by, there's still a difference of working there than there is other spots. It's funny too. I mean, and I know you worked with Eric for years. I actually met Eric one of my years on Sirius XM hosting football shows, and he used to call in. And then at first I wasn't sure who it was, just this guy Eric calling, and it turns out it was EY. And we started talking and stuff. And then a couple of years later, we've done shows together the last couple of years, different networks. We've hosted football shows together. He's a good dude. I mean, I've always liked working with him a lot. He even showed me one of his early films, one of him and his buddies. I'm sure if you're a buddy of his, he make you watch that show of his, like when they were some sort of Crime Stopper kind of things. You ever see that? Did he ever indulge you with that?
I'm trying to think if that.
It's hilarious. Yes. It's some like B movie thing. He's like, dude, you got to watch this thing, man. Yeah. It's so great. It's so hilarious. He sent it to me and I watched it. It was just hilarious. I mean, like they're doing bad flips over cars. They're like, they're like bored kids up in Canada at 17, right?
Yeah. I remember he didn't show it to me. Somebody else, one of the other guys that filmed that, like one of the other guys, maybe it was Eric. I remember seeing it though.
It's hilarious.
It was pretty good. I remember it was like pretty good. Like it was good B rated. I'm like, that's awesome. You guys are doing like,
it's totally before iPhones like and stuff too. Like it was like home movie camera. We got to edit this together kind of stuff. So you got, it's not like nowadays where kids could go out there and make a movie on their phone. It's not, this was way back in the, early 90s kind of deal. It's a whole different ballpark. Oh man. That was, like I said, I was just curious if he made you watch it too. Cause he made me watch it. I thought it was hysterical.
No, I definitely, I did see it. I remember that. I just can't remember if he showed it to me or if somebody else showed it to me. You got to remember, like he's friends with like Ty Dillinger, right, and like other guys from Toronto too. So I mean, all those guys and like Bobby, like all those guys and Cody Deaner, who I don't even know if but those guys all used to hang out together and film all this stuff together. Going to be professional wrestlers together and work their way up together and stuff like that.
Yeah, they were like 20 or 19 years old. Like, and he's just, you mentioned Bobby for a second. I'm curious there too. I mean, this almost kind of goes back to the same thing that we were just talking about. There's a guy that's, been around the business forever. Different incarnations, had the run with Beer Money and all that stuff. Had a successful run at NXT, which I thought was a really good run. And I feel like now he's on the big show, and now I feel like if they don't turn him heel and turn him heel fast, I feel like he's falling flat and he's going to die. I feel like he's coming out, he's just an entrance now, and he's kind of getting buried in the middle. And they're not giving him a character. They're not giving him a foil. They're not giving him anything to do. It's like the groundswell of everything he did in NXT. They're just trying to carry it over because everybody liked him in NXT. But I feel like everybody liked him in NXT because he was kind of a dick. And, you know, they're not letting him be a dick. And I feel like it's kind of falling flat. And, you know, when you finally get to that level and that paycheck and all that stuff, and I know the pressure that comes with it, you know, how do you approach that kind of thing? You know, when you get those opportunities, do you think that they're responsible for going to the company and say, hey, you need to do this, or hey, look, do they sense it? Do they sense when something's not working, or are they just some people just happy to be in that position where, hey, look, I'm here, I'm just going to do whatever they ask me to do for better or worse?
Yeah, it's a little bit of both. I remember Bobby back when Team Canada days, maybe post Team Canada days. I mean, he does not want to be a babyface. I remember, I mean, maybe it's changed. It's been, I don't know, 10 years or so.
It doesn't feel like it from watching him. It feels like it still doesn't want to do it. No, you could tell when a dude's unhappy doing something, I feel.
I just don't think he's unhappy. I just think he's like, you know, I'm more comfortable as being a heel. Like when I first met Bobby Roode, I looked at him. Before I met him, I saw the picture of him on the flyer of the show I'm going to be on with him. I'm like, oh man, that guy looks like an a-hole in real life. You know what I mean?
Right.
And then I meet him and I'm like, wow, he kind of has that smug, like, you know, like I'm kind of a dick.
It's just
type.
his face. Like I think it might just
the way he looks. It's just the way he looks. Bobby, I look up to him now as like an older brother. Like he is like so awesome, like hilarious and all that kind of stuff. He's not that person in real life. But when you look at just the look, so you have to play off the look. Why would you make him a babyface? Somebody that doesn't watch NXT, they bring, you know, Bobby Roode to SmackDown, and you look at him, and people are gonna be like, I don't know if I should cheer for him because I just don't like the way he looks. He looks like a bad guy. I mean, he just like, you know, the squinty eyes and like the beady eyes and all that kind of stuff. Like, and he knew right off the bat. He's like, I don't want to be a babyface. Like this is back in the Impact days. Mm-hmm. So now I don't know if he grew, but I mean, you know, he probably loved being a top heel in NXT, and he worked, you know, great doing that. And now, what do you do as a babyface? I mean, it's just nowadays, it is so tough being a babyface. I mean, this is the first time in my career I've been playing a babyface. I've been a heel, being pro Canada since like 2004. Right. And now it's 2018. And now they're like, oh, yeah, you're a babyface. Everywhere you go, you're a babyface. Yeah, wave that Canadian flag. I'm like, dude, I can't wave the Canadian flag in the U.S. Like, that doesn't matter. You're a babyface. It's tough being a babyface, you know? So, I mean, I know he doesn't like it. What are they going to do from now? I mean, yeah. I mean, I think they're going to turn him heel. They got to do it.
Yeah, I
don't
feel
see
like
where else they can go with it.
I feel like guys like you know, you've just earned so much respect. I think that you've got respect from the crowd.
Bobby's been around for a long time, too.
But know? Not in this company. So, I mean, you can't use that's the thing. It's like, you know, I feel like, and maybe this isn't true. I mean, I don't know, but I feel like there's a really large chunk of WWE fans that just watch WWE. But then there's the wrestling fan, and I consider myself the wrestling fan who watches everything. I watch New Japan. I'll watch, you know, TNA. I'll watch, you know, I'll watch whatever it is because I like to see the different things and I am a connoisseur of it. But I feel like that's the problem. You know, it's you know, they don't care about the runs in TNA necessarily. The WWE fan, they don't, and some of them don't even care about the NXT to a certain extent. There's that large chunk of the fan base that just knows him from, oh, he comes out, he's glorious, he's got, you know, this Ric Flair kind of robe thing going on and all of this, and it just feels a little. Right now, it feels empty, and I think it's a waste. And I think if they turn him heel properly and let him do that he could save it. I don't think it's past due, but it's a weird concern where it just feels really flat, and I feel like now he's getting kind of buried. He doesn't even have a singles match. Now it's a 3-way match with Jinder and him and Randy Orton, and it's just, I don't know, it just feels a little weird. You know, here's another question for you too, you know, while kind of on this, and it kind of, you know, spurns right into it with the success of some of these independent, you know, Bullet Club has been huge, and the success and really the integration of, because of the digital media world we live in, where you can get subscriptions online and watch New Japan. It's on, you know, different channels. You can get stuff and all these other things. Do you think we're in an age now where if you really can put out a good product in one of these other companies, whether it be TNA or New Japan, because of the digital age we live in and the accessibility, that a company really could put it together if it had the right sensibility and the right people with it and the right star power, and really could challenge again almost to the days of the old, Monday Night Wars?
Yeah, that's a good question. Now, and I don't know. So I'll look at Impact. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I don't talk to Scott D'Amore about business or Sanjay or any of those guys, right? But just looking, I just take a step back and I look to see what's going on organically, okay? And maybe it's not organically, of what's going on. So you look at Impact, before when it was ran by Dixie and stuff like that.
Right.
It was like, we're the best, right? They didn't want, talent wasn't able to work other shows and be on other DVDs and stuff. Now you look at it and it's like, well, what are we doing? Oh, now we're working with Tommy Dreamer, House of Hardcore. Now we're working with like Lucha Underground.
Right.
Now we're working with, so you're making all these like connections and like I don't know what you call them, like connections or like cross promotions, we'll call them.
Cross promotion, yeah, right.
Yeah. So now it looks like, okay, Impact's open to be like, okay, yeah, we'll cross promote with anybody. Maybe in the future Ring of Honor. That's what I'm hoping for, because a lot of my friends work for Ring of Honor, and I'm like, see if you get enough cross promotions. And everybody, instead of like, yeah, okay, Impact, Ring of Honor, House of Hardcore, Lucha Underground, if they all try to like attack the WWE individually, they're going to fail. It doesn't like it's just not going to happen. But together, as a group, as a team, collectively attacking not that you're trying to attack the WWE, but go up against them, that you have a good shot. Because now you're like, oh man, can you imagine if like back in the day, if you had like, there's WWE, I know they weren't the top ones, but like, you had WCW and ECW. If like two of them teamed up and just went after the other one, and can you imagine if they did it with other promotions too that were working their way up?
Well, that was the problem.
It'd
the problem in those
phenomenal.
Monday Night Wars days, it's obviously we all know the guaranteed contracts in WCW and a lot of the big investments in the older guys and the refusal of the older guys to put the young guys over is what killed that company. No matter, that's common knowledge. But yeah, had things gone differently, had they recognized that, and had they, maybe even, like you said, integrated from ECW or other, promotions and brought that in, I think also that, the thing that I mentioned too, Petey, is that idea of, the wrestling fan. I mean, the hardcore wrestling fan not just the WWE fan per se, but the wrestling fan. They know who all these guys are, so they get stoked if they see a Ring of Honor guy show up on TNA. They're like, "Oh wow, cool!"
Yeah.
There's a cachet there. There's an excitement level because it's unexpected, right? And if you could do that, if you can make them all kind of intertwined in that way, this whole direct-to-consumer media world that we live in, to me, I think there's opportunity there, and I see what the Bullet Club putting the show together and all that stuff. I mean, when you heard that, what was your take on it? When you heard he's like, we're going to go out, we're going to put our own show up there, and we're going to fill an arena. No, they couldn't, and they're going to go out there. I think they're going to fill that arena that night, don't you?
Yeah, I think they'll fill that arena. And I talked with Dennis about this. I'm like, what we were just talking about, like, would they bring Punk? If they did have Punk lined up on the card, like, how would you work them? And I said, like, if they sell 10,000 seats, don't advertise them. You already sold 10,000 seats. You don't need to advertise anything else. But if you're not selling the 10,000 seats and you got to do it, yeah, then you might advertise them to sell that last few tickets. But I think they could do it. 10,000 people. I've wrestled a non-WWE show or Impact show in front of 10,000 people. It was in like Italy, well, and in Japan and stuff like that. But I remember Italy, like, I remember myself and AJ Styles were like the main event when he was NWA TNA World Champion. It was a 2 out of 3 fall match. It was, I think they could do it, especially it being in Chicago. You got the Bullet Club. I mean,
well, isn't the thing to do, Petey? Isn't the thing to do is prove that you could do it on your own, and then have him show up. But then have him show up, and it's unexpected or whatever. It's not billed, right? So that the next one, it's like, oh crap, they're going to be, I don't know, in Texas or they're wherever they end up being, in New York, whatever. And well, who are they going to bring this time? And you could sell it based on that, based on the unexpected appearance, because you've proven two things. Number one, you've proven that you can do it on your own without, necessarily the big card name on there or whatever that might be, the star power thing, that big, proven out guy. experienced veteran guy in that sense, but also to the sense of, hey, look, we've got a lot going on here. We can do this, and it could really revolutionize the business too, where, you're talking about the talent really taking over in terms of the promotion.
Yeah. And I mean, the Bullet Club's just so hot right now, and you have to be careful. You don't want to book yourself in a corner,
right,
where you're like, okay, who's the surprise guest this time? I remember working for Border City years and years ago. I remember we brought in, as a surprise, back when ECW like first kind of went under, we brought in Father Jim. And then Father Jim came out. People were like, oh my God, Father Jim's here. Who's he going to bring out? Like, actually, they didn't even know he was going to bring out something. He's like, hey, I got somebody that is going to face you. And they brought out Lance Storm.
Yeah.
And they were like, oh my God. So we had all these surprises, and people were like, would just show up to the Border City wrestling shows for the surprises. But then we ran out of surprises. Mm-hmm. And then we're like, but we still had like we're advertising Lance Storm, or advertising Tommy Dreamer and all this stuff right off their hot ECW runs. And then they're like, well, is that it? You don't have a big surprise? Like the fans were expecting so much more because we were giving them so much more. So you just have to be careful. You don't like book yourself in the corner, because they're going to be like, well, who's the big surprise this time? So say if Punk is a surprise, there's not going to be a bigger surprise than that. I don't care what anybody says. He hasn't been in wrestling for years. That's the biggest surprise. You can't really top that. So
is there a part of them that doesn't want to do it with Punk? That you think that they're like, you know what, we want to do this without him to prove the point? People can speculate and do whatever they want about it, but does that in a way taint the message of what it is they're trying to do and prove the world wrong in the first place?
Yes and no, because Punk might want to be part of that. Like, hey, I could sell out 10,000, but the thing is, he's not advertised, so it's not like he could say he sold out 10,000. But
no, you're right.
He could say he was a part of that. But dude, I sure hope they do it, because then hopefully, like, it becomes a thing. Like you said,
the talent kind of taking the reins of the control. Yeah. Because it's a direct to consumer. I see this in the power of being on Sirius XM radio was great, right? But it's equally strong, the power of social media. It's equally strong to doing podcasts and being like you guys, like you and Dennis have been doing here. I mean, look at that. Like, you guys could be doing this show somewhere on some small radio station somewhere and reaching a couple thousand people, or you could be reaching hundreds of thousands of people, on a podcast where everyone could just get it, without, being in an area. And I feel like that's the beauty of where we are now, is if you have a great product, you have the ability to put it out there. Whereas back, 20 years ago, you were still kind of regionalized to a certain extent.
Yeah, no, I mean, social media, and I've said this before, like, at the same time, it's a blessing because you could reach so many people and you could just view so much content. If I wanted to right now, I can watch like any type of wrestling, so much wrestling from now until the end of the week. And it's only Monday right now.
Right.
That's what I can do. Back, like, when I first started watching wrestling, I would have to like scratch and claw just to find wrestling content because there was not enough out there. So, at the same time, it's almost like we're oversaturated with content, but at the same time, it's like, it's good that, the consumer, the fan, the listener, the watcher, the viewer, they have their choice of what they want to view. So if they view your stuff or listen to your stuff or whatever, that just goes to show it's like, hey, I must be doing something good because they have so much to choose from and they chose me.
And they're a more educated base now too, because of the exposure to all these different styles. So to me, if you're hot now, then you must be really good, because I feel like the general look of the the wrestling universe out there is, it's like you said, much more informed. They have exposure to more, styles of wrestling. You've seen the lucha stuff, you see, the X Division stuff over the years. You've seen all this evolution, the hardcore era of things and all of that. So, we've seen so much of it that if you can really captivate an audience now, I think that's very special. I think that's something that is, if you're at the top of your game now and you're the ones who could pack a 10,000 seat arena just on your own without a promotion, well, guess what? That says a lot about you. And it's also, again, I think that authenticity factor, fans want something authentic. They want to go in, they want to be part of something that's authentic. It's so funny because the the idiots out there who still, you know, there's still that weird thing where like, oh, it's fake or whatever it is. Like, no, you don't understand it. It's a story. It's choreographed. It's all these things. It's entertainment. It's what it is. And for that small base that doesn't understand that, the irony I always found, Petey, is the wrestling fan base is the most truthful and honest and can tell you because they want truth. They want to feel the journey of the story overlap in the ring and have it played out and the drama played out in front of them. And that's the joy of it. And the guys who can do that and the girls who can do that now, I mean, that's what makes them so special. And I think that's why it's so unique. You know, one last thing here before we wrap up. You know, we're talking about social media, and I wanted to ask you this question because, you know, this is a question that I had asked a couple of, you know, other guys that I know in the business. I want to get your take on it too. And I understand the wrestling era in the 80s was a very different game. You know, obviously because there was no social media, God knows what some of these guys were doing. We all know what most of them were doing, and we all know the steroids and the drugs and all those things. But I always feel like when you hear these stories, and you've heard them, I know, and I'm sure you've heard a lot of them, you know, firsthand too. You know, they'd go out there, they're performing for thousands of people, the adrenaline rush, all this stuff, and then it's back to the hotel room or to some, you know, podunk bar or whatever it is, and trying to capture that and trying to balance the oddity of, you know, thousands of people screaming your name and the next minute you're alone by yourself kind of thing and filling that void. Do you think that social media and Twitter and Facebook and all these interactions that the superstars of this industry have with the fans now, do you think that that's changed and has it been a more positive impact on the culture overall? I mean, I understand there's a lot of negativity on Twitter and all that stuff and stupid people, but at the same time, do you think that's kind of bridged the gap a little bit where there isn't that shut off of, oh my God, I'm up here and all these things and this adulation and all this attention and now it's nothing. It's crickets. Whereas the social media almost kind of like it bridges that gap a little bit.
Yeah, it does. Like, you know, if I wanted to, I could go on social media and say something and then be like, oh, fans are listening to me. This is awesome. You know, I'm cool or what, like
right.
The same thing you
but it's
feel
natural.
like
it's something actors go through too, Petey. I mean, they're you know, everybody loves them and whatever. And then, you know, and then they're, you know, isolated and all that stuff. And it's not different, you know?
No, I understand. Everybody wants to be relevant. It's great. I just feel, and I've said this before, I think the wrestling industry, I won't say wrestlers, but the wrestling industry uses social media all wrong. I really do. And this is why I look at, and I talk about this other podcast, I look at Sami Callihan, okay? And, you know, he's using it right, what I feel, okay? He's saying, I'm not remorseful for hitting Eddie Edwards in the face with a baseball bat. You know, no, I'm not going to say sorry. All this kind of stuff, right? Playing the big heel and stuff like that. And he's actually getting other wrestlers involved saying, like, how dare you not feel remorseful? You should say sorry and stuff like that. And I'm like, dude, guys, we're wrestlers. We know it's a work. Like, why are we fighting each other on this? I'm like, Sami Callihan obviously is sorry. Like, you know, and very upset and remorseful that he hit somebody in the face with a bat. I did a felonious assault to a person. Obviously he's sorry. If he wasn't sorry and remorseful, he probably wouldn't have a job anymore. But this is great because he's using it. Everybody's thinking like, oh man, this guy's a dick, man. How can he not be remorseful? Because in Twitter world, you say everything that's true and real. So what he's saying right now is real and true. So that's how wrestlers and the wrestling industry should be using social media to you know, mask this kayfabe that's obviously been forgotten. So what Sami's doing right now, I love it because he has people confused, and that's what it should be. Wrestling should be a blurred line. Like, is he remorseful? Is he not remorseful? I haven't talked to Sami Callihan. All I know is that I was backstage when after it happened, and I know Sami's remorseful for what he did. That's all I can say. But, you know, I'm not supposed to say that or whatever because that's not going to bring ratings to our next show. You know, and if
you're right,
it's
the perfect controversial. It's the perfect forum to reestablish the gray area, if you will, right?
Yeah, and that's what wrestling should be, a gray area. And I mean, and that's why I mean when the wrestling industry uses social media wrong, because you look at guys that are like, oh man, I hate this person and I'm going to kill him and all that kind of stuff. But oh, look at my baby was born yesterday and I'm an awesome dad. It's like, what? Come on, guys. Like, no.
Well, would
No.
you expect them to have different account? Like, should they have an account for them? Like, should you have the, Petey Williams account for, your, I don't want to say personal use or whatever, but Petey Williams, and then the Canadian Destroyer is the other one where you do all the kayfabe stuff.
I don't know, because everybody's just going to follow that personal one because they want to know your personal gossip.
Right, because they want to see your kids. Right? Oh, look at Petey's cats; they're so cute.
Yeah, exactly, and that's what I do. I like the pictures of my kids on my Facebook account and all that kind of. But on Twitter, like I'm like it's me, but like also like I'm going to retweet my wrestling stuff. I mean that's the purpose of my Twitter, like and. It's a weird world we live in. I think, it'd be great. Man, you can be the biggest heel on Twitter and get so much controversy, but you probably get fired from your job because everybody thinks that what you say on Twitter, it's like, oh, you can't say that on social media. You can't say that. It's just, I don't know. I just think it's used wrong. And I think if a wrestling company starts using it the way it should be to create controversy and stuff like that without firing their employees because they created controversy, then you have a gold mine right there.
Well, I feel like WWE, like they toy with it sometimes where, somebody's calling somebody out or saying, somebody asks for a match.
Yeah, but it's fake.
Like, of course, it's completely staged. Right. So, does it matter if it's staged or like you're saying is the opportunity, maybe you're right. Maybe the opportunity is the person who can gray that line a little bit. And just become like a super heel
right now.
Right. Just not become president of the United States, just like an awesome wrestler. Like if you have somebody who's really good at like stirring up the shitstorm on Twitter, but like not be president.
That's what I mean.
Can we just not do that?
Yeah. So, I mean, that's my take on it. Oh, I guess I'll leave it at that.
No, it's a good take. Hey, it's a good take. All right. Before we wrap this up, too, one more thing, too. Who is it? Okay. It's always hard because I feel like, and I don't want to put you to the screws or anything like that, but who do you get excited to watch in the ring nowadays still? I mean, it can be guys that you might have worked with before or some up-and-coming guy. Like, is there somebody in the last year or so when you are flipping around or when you stumble across, maybe Dennis said, hey, you got to watch this, or is there anybody to you that you're like, oh, I got to watch that guy work?
Yeah, I'm a big fan of, I know we use this word organic all the time, and I don't even know, this is like a new word for me. I haven't remember using it that often. But when I look at stars of the past, that now we look at it, it's an organic thing. Stone Cold was such an organic thing.
Oh, yeah.
Like, just fans started loving him. The Rock, same thing. All of a sudden, he was calling Rudy Poo candy asses, and then people were loving that. And then
I remember sitting in college, dude, and I'm sitting there. We used to go to my buddy John's house every night to watch Raw. And, he came out and he started doing his people's, I'm the people's champion gimmick, and everyone, even the people in the room, they were like rolling their eyes. They were like, no, dude, this is hilarious. Like, this is going to work. This guy's a genius. And then, a year later, he's headlining WrestleMania. It's like, you just know. So yeah. Is there somebody right now that's working that you're like, what this guy's doing is great, or I gotta watch this guy in the ring because he's just so special or whatever it is, and I think that means a lot more coming from somebody like you who's such a tactician in the ring. So that's why I'm curious, who's the guy that you look at and you're like, wow, that dude's awesome.
See, I don't know if I do. I view it more now from a different perspective, like the organicness. I'm like, ooh, I want to watch this because I want to see how the fans react to him. I mean, that's what I'm about. Like,
so who's that guy? Or gal, maybe, for that matter.
Yeah, like, for example, like this Rusev thing, I'm really like, I want to see how they react to him. Even still, I'm still infatuated with Roman Reigns because I know they're trying to push him for the fans to cheer him. And I'm like, are they going to cheer him this week? Nope, they booed him. So I tune in to see, to almost gauge the audience. I'm almost like watching the audience rather than the wrestler. But the wrestler is the tool because, they're trying to present him as either the good guy or the bad guy. Even when John Cena was years ago, when he was first starting to get booed, I loved it because I was like, oh man, they're booing him. They're booing him out of the building. It's great. So, I mean, and even when the Shield came back, and they put Roman Reigns in it and they were kind of cheering him, I'm like, this thing, I was very interested in it. So, I mean, I think WWE has to book that way more because, I feel like more fans will watch if they just like view it from my perspective. I shouldn't say it like that because then I sound like I'm egotistical. But I mean, that's
no.
how
But you're right. You're right. You're bringing up a perspective
you know?
of making it must-see television and not worrying about so much of the
Yeah.
outcome, but worry more about what kind of interesting situation can we put him in rather than what's the outcome of it all the time. You know, or what's
to answer your question, like, yeah, I mean, I do like watching AJ and stuff like that. It's just because I love seeing these guys that I used to wrestle. Like, I'll want to watch AJ, Bobby, Joe, all these guys that I wrestled before
mm-hmm.
and what, like shared a locker room with and stuff like that. I like watching all their matches because I want to see, you know, how they changed and how they're doing things differently and just their successes. I'm so happy for them. So those are the guys that I have to watch nowadays.
Well, dude, this has been super fun. Thanks so much for letting me come on here and do the show with you tonight. I want to thank Dennis, too. If you're interested in listening to our show, you can find it on iTunes. It's called In This Ring. It's myself and Tim Heaney over from RotoWire. You can follow me on Twitter at Joe Pisapia17. We got a new episode dropping on Thursday. Wednesday. We're going to be recording Wednesday, and it's dropping a little bit later, usually in the afternoon on Wednesday. We'll recap everything, but we're doing top 5 WrestleManias. We do a lot of silly stuff on the show, a lot of serious discussions, too. We talk about all the different independents, the main stuff, everything we talk about. And this has been super fun for me, man, and I'm excited. And I hope, you know, we can get you on there and come on and do a quick, you know, 15-minute spot with us if you have the time one time, man.
Yeah, sure. Absolutely. And, you know, from our end, our website, what is it? The Wrestling Perspective Podcast.com. That's a mouthful, but also, you know, please, guys, if you're listening, you know, if you have not subscribed yet, please go subscribe, give us a 5-star rating and stuff like that. We appreciate all your support and stuff like everything. And you know, iHeartRadio too. Now we're on iHeartRadio, so we're really excited about that. And
you're
Joe,
so big time,
you know,
Petey. Look at you, man.
I know. Trying to make it in the podcast world, man. It's something else to make
just
it.
Keep carrying Dennis.
Easy.
That's all. Just keep carrying him. Keep carrying. But Dennis is a good pal of mine. I've worked with Dennis for years, and like, you know, I've listened to the show. I think you guys are awesome, and I think it's again what's supposed to happen here. You know, you guys going out there doing this show, going out there being real, and you can feel it. You can feel the passion, obviously, and the discussion. It's a great discussion every week, and you know, I think that's why it's doing so well for you guys. It's well earned.
Thanks, Joe. And hey, Joe, thanks for filling in for Dennis because you know, he left me high and dry, and I needed somebody. So thank you for filling in.
That's right. Well, I'm happy to do it, and thanks for having me. And I hope all the continued success for you guys. You keep going on in iHeartRadio and the next chapter of the Wrestling Perspective.